Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gouveia. I am a criminal defense attorney at the R&R Law Group located in the always beautiful and sunny Scottsdale, Arizona. And today, my friends, we're talking about seizures, not the medical seizures, but we are talking about searches and seizures and things being taken out of persons' possessions by the federal government, the FBI, and the DOJ. And I'm watching the chat today. The YouTube chat is a spicy one today. K Bean said, hey, hit the like button. And everybody said, no. We don't think so. Not yet. But hopefully we can earn those likes, and shout out to everybody in the chats. All right. And so as we get started, you can see we've got 3 segments as usual that we're going to attend to today. Donald Trump responding. We had big news yesterday that the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals came back and they denied the Trump request to sort of let things stand. They granted the government's request to stay the special master order. We are going to read through that in detail. We read a little bit of it yesterday, but because it was sort of at the end of the show, we wanted to make sure that we could really piece together what was going on. And so we do have that. It's about 29 pages, I think. It's not that long. We'll get through it in quick speed. But there were some consequences from this thing because, as you can see here, after the 11th Circuit made their rulings, this went back down to the actual district court in Florida, and Judge Aileen issued a response. Okay, she got the ruling from her manager. The government said, we'd like to talk to your manager. So they went up, they gave her a response, and so she has to say something about it. And then Raymond Dearie came out and posted the case management plan for the rest of the actual case. And so we're going to learn about all of that. There was an amicus brief that was filed by some people supporting the government, and I was going to go through that, but we'll probably fast forward through it since we know what the ruling is. But Trump was also out last night, and he did an interview, sort of an exclusive with Sean Hannity, and he was talking about the declassification process and about the formal or lack of formal process that he went through, and talking about sort of thinking about it. I'm the president. I have original source power. And so I can think it, I can say something, and it's done, right? It's like giving an order, like, yes, go do that thing. And so he referenced that. And he also said that they took his will in addition to Melania's underwear. They took Donald Trump's will as well. He says, maybe, could be. He's thinking about it. He's not too sure. And so we've got a lot of that in the first segment that we're going to get into before we change gears a little bit and talk about, well, it's kind of all related. I mean, it's the MAGA warfare. The Seventh Circle Gates of Hell speech that Joe Biden gave means that the federal government is supposed to go out there and round up anybody who is not uniform in their political ideology. Of course, that means people like Mike Lindell get raided by the FBI when they're just sitting at a Hardee's trying to order a nice meal. Mike Lindell sued the federal government. There's a 20-page complaint that we can take a look at. We also have a little bit of background that came out from CNN, and I want to show you the CNN story because it is so emotively conjugated. It's unbelievable. It's like, how is this even a news piece? How is this even a news piece, not an opinion piece? But we'll get some background there. The exhibit that Mike Lindell submitted in his lawsuit against the government is kind of hysterical because it shows us the attachment that the FBI gave them. And you can see here the FBI uses this caricature of Mike Lindell. Look, that's what they put in there. It's hilarious. They're like one figure that looks like a silhouette like this named Mike Lindell. And it looks just like him. Yeah, I mean, it really is a silhouette. So that's our joke of an FBI who's like, writing documents like that. Hilarious. And then we'll check in with Alan Dershowitz. They're talking about a special master in that case. And I'm not so sure that is going to go anywhere, but we will check in with that. And then lastly, there was this story of this MAGA alleged murder that took place out of North Dakota. This guy, his name is Shannon Brandt. You can see him here in the orange. And he's been charged with vehicular homicide and leaving the scene of an accident when somebody needed aid. And so we'll go through this. This took place out of North Dakota, and it's a horrible story. This young man, we talked about this on our morning walk and talk this morning for members. And this young man, Caylor Ellingson, was killed, 18 years old. And the story is just gruesome. So we'll see how much of it we can get into. But absolutely tragic. And the reason we're covering this, of course, is because this gentleman, Shannon Brandt, in the affidavit, in the probable cause statement that we'll take a look at, kind of a politically motivated killing, which is something we've been warned about, but this is the opposite, right? It's instead of the extreme domestic, homegrown militia, whatever categories, it's kind of the opposite, right? It's kind of a Democrat who is maybe buying into Biden's rhetoric. I don't know. So we're going to talk about that story and more. And as you can see, we zoom out on this puppy. We have got a lot of business to attend to. And if you want to be a part of the show when we're talking Trump, when we're talking Mike Lindell, when we're talking the MAGA murder, well, the best place to do that is over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. You can see the web address over there. We can do the morning walk and talks where we talk about the news and sort of say good morning and hello and what's going on. You know, happy Wednesday, happy Thursday, that type of thing. Chatting away, we've got Tweak, Zach Nichols. We got Matt's mom's in the house who just made it by live. Shout out to Matt's mom. We're glad you made it. We've got B-Spec, Bonnie, Emotional Old Cat Ladies in the house, Ion Energy, C. Reed's over there, and they're all chatting away about fun stuff over there. We also have members on YouTube, so if you don't want to join up on Locals, you can also join as a member on YouTube. Click that join button right next to the subscribe button. You get a lot of the same features, including some custom gifts for your jiffing pleasure. And of course, I am a criminal defense lawyer at the R&R Law Group. We have an amazing team of lawyers. In fact, we're meeting tomorrow. There's not going to be a live show tomorrow. I want to make that announcement now because we are doing a big team event on Fridays. We like to do some project work. We have a whole day event where we're all bringing all of our lawyers in and we're all just smashing our heads together to really sort of increase the robustness of DUI defense specifically. So we have 5 lawyers coming together. My business partner's out of town. But we're going to be doing that tomorrow because we're passionate about helping good people charged with crimes find safety, clarity, and hope, not only in their cases, but also in their lives. 480-787-0394 is the phone number for free case evaluations. You can also schedule those online as well. And shout out to my friends over on Rumble. We've got Cat Crap Fevers over there. Jack Alaya chatting away, along with Slow Hand, Rick 2020, Donald Trump, Larry One's in the house, One Corona. Chase James is over there. And, you know, there's some big stuff happening over on Rumble. My understanding is 3 girlies in our locals community said that there was, what's his name? Russell Brand is going over to Rumble. So joining Viva and others over there. Woo, that's some pretty good stuff. All right, so let's get this queued up so we can get into the business of the day. Donald Trump talks Mar-a-Lago, and he is also responding to some of the allegations that he declassified these documents. He is talking to Sean Hannity, and Sean Hannity asks him, did you go through a process? But there's more, because Donald Trump also is the recipient of sort of a bad ruling by the status quo thinking that came down from the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. And before we get into this motion, remember that the government does not want the special master that was previously appointed to look at the documents. That's why they appealed this thing. And we read through their memo and Trump's memo, and we've unpacked this in prior shows. But the argument was the criminal prosecution needed to stop and the delivery of the 100 documents needed to stop. That was the original order that came out from Judge Aileen Cannon, the district level judge. That judge was challenged by the prosecutors who said to the Court of Appeals, that should be stayed. Don't allow the judge to do those things. Please stay it. Trump said, no, we want the special master to do those things. But the 11th Circuit came out and said, no, they granted the government's appeal as to both counts. And I want to show you now the actual documents. 29-page order out of the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals in the case of Donald Trump versus the United States of America. And this is on appeal from the Southern District of Florida, the lower level court where Judge Aileen Cannon granted the order appointing the special master, and the government didn't want that to happen. They said, please undo that stay or grant a stay and undo the special master order. So when they took it up to the Court of Appeals, we have 3 circuit judges who write as follows. Per curiam, meaning this is the opinion of the court. This is not just one judge who's signing off on this document. This is all of us sort of signing together. They write, following the execution of a search warrant at Trump's house, Trump moved for a special master to be appointed. And the district court, Judge Aileen Cannon, granted that in substantial part. Now, the United States government is here asking for a stay of Cannon's order as it relates to those 100 documents. The Court of Appeal says we decide only, right? We're limiting this. And we talked about this yesterday about the scope. Can the Court of Appeals just kind of go out there and do this, that, or the other? And they can, but here, right, they don't. They say we decide only the narrow question presented. One, whether the United States, the government, has established that it is entitled to a stay of the order. Right? That's it. Is it entitled to a stay? And if it is, to the extent that it requires the government to submit to the special master those 100 documents, okay? Do they have to give those over? And number two, does it enjoin the United States from using those subsets in a criminal investigation? And they say we conclude it has. The government has met their burden. The government is saying we are going to be irreparably harmed, and all of the different indicia that we talked about previously, the Court of Appeals is agreeing. Now they write, we stress the limited nature of our review. Okay, very limited. They say this matter comes to us on a motion for a partial stay pending the appeal. We cannot and do not decide the merits of the case, right? Not about whether Trump is a criminal or a nuclear thief or whatever. They're just saying, look, only on the partial stay pending appeal. We decide only the traditional equitable considerations, including whether the United States has shown a substantial likelihood of prevailing on the merits, the harm each party must suffer, and where the public interest lies. Right? Those are the same factors that we've covered a lot here previously. And they say, for the reasons we explained below, we grant the U.S. motion for a partial stay pending the appeal. Judge Aileen Cannon, of course, is going to get this order, and we'll take a look at and see how she responded to it. But before we do, let's get into the order. 11th Circuit writes, we've got some factual background. They say that the Trump presidency ended and he left in January 2021. When he left, there were boxes of documents that were transferred from the White House to his personal residence in Florida. The record reveals that throughout 2021, and consistent with its responsibilities under the PRA, the Presidential Records Act, NARA sought to get those records from Trump. In response to those requests, Trump in January gave them 15 boxes of documents. They sent them back over. National Archives reviewed the documents and said that there were newspapers in there, magazine articles, and also presidential correspondence, and also post-presidential records, and a lot of classified records, right? That is in an affidavit that they submitted to go search his residence. So after they found that, they said, uh-oh, there's classified records in there. And those were the overdue library books. And NARA, Deborah Steidelwall, said that we got to get those library books back. And because Joe Biden waived that executive privilege, that authorized the DOJ to sort of get the referral from NARA, send the FBI in to go take care of business. They write, consequently, the National Archives sent a referral by email to the DOJ, right? And that is the referral. That's the start of this whole thing, because the National Archives had that executive privilege waived by the Biden people. The 11th Circuit says, upon learning about the classified materials, the department sought access to the 15 boxes so the FBI and the intelligence agencies, so-called, could examine them. National Archives told Trump that it was going to give FBI access to during the week of April 18th. Trump requested an extension, and the National Archives held off on sending the documents to the FBI. On that date, Trump asked for another extension of time and said if the National Archives declined to grant the extension, that guess what? Trump is going to assert executive privilege over the documents. So I'm entitled to the documents. We're willing to work with you, but if you're not going to give us additional time, we're just going to assert executive privilege over them, and you're not entitled to them anyways. That's our legal interpretation of the statutes. On May 10th, the National Archives informed Trump's lawyers that it had decided not to honor Trump's protective claim. Why? Because the current president waived all of that, right? He said, no, we're not going to allow that to happen. I want those documents. I want Trump rated. And so he waived all of that. And so Trump's representatives, they say, we're asserting it, but NARA said, we don't care. We're not honoring that, and we are going to give the FBI access to the records in May. The letter noted that President Biden had deferred to the National Archives that the executive privilege did not apply, right? And so Biden, as we've covered this previously, but Biden sort of affirmatively, according to Judge Aileen Cannon, made the affirmative acknowledgement at the urging of the current president that the executive privilege was waived, which allowed the National Archives to go instigate all this. Despite this advanced warning, Trump made no effort to block the FBI's access to the documents at that time. So the 11th Circuit says, during a preliminary review of the documents between certain dates, the FBI found that 184 documents included various classification level markings. FBI also developed evidence in other boxes. The department obtained a grand jury subpoena directed to the plaintiff's custodian of records, which I think is Lindsay Halligan, who is one of Trump's lawyers, and requested all documents and writings be verified that they were turned over. Counsel was served with that subpoena on May, and I'm pretty sure she signed off on it. Right, so that's the document that it says, did you give us all the library books back? We're here to get the library books, okay? We did like a rough search of the place. Did we get them all? And you say, you got them all. And they say, can you just sign this document to make sure that we really got them all? And she did. You got them all. Get out of here. The 11th Circuit says that Trump sought and received an extension of time to produce the subpoena documents. After initially denying the request, the government extended the compliance deadline. In response to the subpoena, Trump's representatives produced an envelope containing 38 documents, and they certified that a diligent search was conducted and any and all responsive documents had been turned over. Envelope contained classified documents and other things. Plaintiff made no claims of privilege with his production in response to that subpoena. Right, and so this custodian of records, this Lindsay Halligan or whoever, right, there's going to be some issues with that. You know, who conducted that search, and does that connect Trump to any liability? Because it sounds like, right, he delegated all of this to his custodian of records who signed off on a document. And, right, it's pretty important you don't just sign documents if you don't know what you're signing, obviously. So if a diligent search was not conducted and she signed that it was, well, that's not ideal, right? And it could have led to this. But does that translate over to Trump's criminal liability? Right? I mean, he's got to have more intent than that, doesn't he? We'll see. Despite Trump's production in response to the subpoena and Trump lawyers' representation that a diligent search had occurred and all responsive documents had been produced, the FBI developed evidence. Oh, yeah. Remember with the undercover mole at Mar-a-Lago who was rummaging around there, you know, sort of surreptitiously spying on everything? They found that more classified documents were at Trump's residence. And so in August, the department, through the FBI's agent's sworn affidavit, informed Judge Reinhart, the magistrate judge, that we got evidence. And the judge agreed, said, yeah, there's probable cause. Certainly go raid the president's. And he did that all over the WhatsApp. Remember the WhatsApp? He's like, yeah, just I'm kind of indisposed at the moment. Can you just WhatsApp me? Yeah, Trump. Oh, I hate him. Oh, that's right. I had a conflict of interest with him on the Trump versus Hillary case, and I got off that case. But if you want to raid his residence, no problem. I'll just WhatsApp the whole thing. No problem. Go do it. So they did. And the FBI concocted this affidavit that we still have not seen yet. And they went and raided his residence before they spread the photos all over the ground and sort of manipulated the evidence and then published that image in front of the entire world. Now, they say that there was enough there that Trump was committing crimes. All right. And based on this evidence, the magistrate judge issued a search warrant for Trump's residence. When the FBI executed the search warrant, it seized 33 items, mostly boxes of documents, containing 11,000 documents and other items in the most general search warrant you've ever seen that said they had access to everything. Among the boxes, 13 contained documents with classification markings. All told, the search uncovered over 100 documents marked confidential, secret, or top secret. So again, right, a very small percentage of this, 100 documents out of the 11,000 documents and out of the 12,800 total items, only 100 documents in that category. And so who conducted the diligent search? Did they look through all the boxes? I mean, it's, you know, out of 11,000 documents, you could easily miss 100. Is that criminal? Is that something that warrants criminal culpability for Donald Trump specifically? They want it too. Yes, they want to say yes. And as we talked about yesterday, part of the Trump dilemma that he runs into is if he says, if I declassified everything, and he affirmatively acknowledges that he declassified every single document, every one of them, I know everything that's in there. Well, what if one of those documents maybe should not have been declassified? You're sort of taking ownership over the whole thing. And in terms of criminal liability, you don't want that. You want that spread around as much as possible. Many other co-defendants, custodian of records, there's the moving company. I don't know. Call U-Haul. I don't know who moved the boxes, right? They're responsible for that, not me. In accordance with the protocol that the magistrate judge had approved the search warrant, the department, the DOJ, directed the, quote, privilege review team composed of agents not otherwise participating in the investigation, right, to review certain seized documents for attorney-client privilege, right? So the FBI said, we're going to have a separate team And it is going to only review the attorney-client privilege stuff so that we can sort of separate that out because, of course, that's privileged. Based on its review, the privilege team identified and segregated, they say, an initial subset of about 520 pages, not documents, that might contain privileged materials. With the remaining documents, members of the investigative team found 2 instances, at least, of potentially privileged materials, which they delivered to the privilege review team. Do you see that? We've got 2 teams now we got to keep track of. The investigative team and the privilege review team. Court of Appeals is acknowledging that the investigation team, which is not supposed to see privileged material, obviously, that's why you have a privilege review team, there were at least 2 instances, which is what Aileen Cannon pointed to and said, hey, DOJ, you said you're doing a great job here managing all these documents and being very forthcoming with the opposing counsel, but apparently you're not, because we've got 2 situations where you had privileged materials that you're not supposed to have. And so how about we don't give you the benefit of the doubt? So the Court of Appeals is acknowledging, right, that has in fact happened. They go through the procedural history. Appeals are usually some heavy lifting in terms of the legalese, but this looks pretty reasonable here. Procedural history, they say 2 weeks after the execution of the search warrant, Trump filed a motion asking for a special master, and we all covered that at length. They talk about jurisdiction and equitable jurisdiction. And remember, the government said that the court, Aileen Cannon, at the district level, had no authority to appoint a special master or to craft equitable remedies. And meaning injunctions, meaning stopping or starting something. And one of the injunctions here was to stop the prosecution from moving forward on their criminal investigation of Trump. And so this is what they're talking about. They say the United States made 3 arguments in opposition. They say the United States said that there was a lack of standing there and that the special master was an exception to the rule, not the rule, and that even if he could, privilege would yield to the United States needs, right? Saying that all of these things would have defaulted towards the government rather than to Trump. They say the appointment of the special master would be inconsistent with the equitable principles, and the case did not involve complex records, so the privilege team was appropriate, right? These are the arguments from the government. As to injunctive relief, whether they could continue to prosecute Trump, the United States said that Trump waited too long, right? He sort of waived his opportunity to stop them from prosecuting him. He was delaying the objection, and it was delaying the investigation, which is causing harm to the government. Trump responded, and he said, of course we've got Fourth Amendment standing. We can be here. I've got some documents in there that we know are mine. I've got possessory interest over those, and you took them anyways. They say, while Trump appears to view appointment of a special master as a predicate. Oh my goodness, what happened there? What happened? Hang on, let me refresh this. I don't know what just happened. My PDF just died. All right. Plaintiff, Trump says that he had Fourth Amendment standing because the characterization of the documents, whether personal or presidential, went to the merits of his claim, not his standing to raise it. They write, Trump views the appointment of the special master as a predicate, and you can see we're getting into some rules reading. They say the district court granted Trump's motion in part, and we've covered that. They go through the Ritchie factors, and let's read some of this analysis. They say, for one factor, they say callous disregard for Trump's constitutional rights, the district court found no evidence that the United States has engaged in this type of behavior. As to the second factor, Trump's interest in and need for the property, the district court determined that plaintiff had an interest in at least some documents, like his medical documents, but it made no finding that he had a need for the classified documents. So you see what they're doing? They're sort of categorizing these separately. Trump said the special master should be involved because I have at least a possessory interest in, let's say, my passport that you took, right? Or some other documents like his will or something. And that privilege, that possessory interest in those pieces of property gives him enough to expand the hula hoop to cover the entire batch of documents. But the Court of Appeals is separating those out. They're saying, well, all right, I mean, it gives you some standing over maybe those other documents, but maybe not the classified documents, unless you can show that there's sort of a nexus there. Is there a connection between the two? The third factor, they say Judge Aileen Cannon weighed in favor of jurisdiction because Trump suffered a likelihood of harm, and that the district court concluded that it could retain jurisdiction. Now, we get to this, and looks like we get some on the merits. The court writes, the district court deemed a special master was warranted, and they're explaining sort of what the district court did. So we're going to fast forward through some of this procedural history, and let's get down into some discussion. The court says, when deciding whether to grant a stay pending appeal, we look at 4 factors, and we've covered those. It's sort of irreparable harm, likelihood of success on the merits, and other things. So one factor, they say the United States argues that the district court probably made a mistake when it took jurisdiction over this and stopped the government from prosecuting Trump. And they say we agree with that. They did Judge Aileen Cannon did overextend the jurisdiction. They say, well, look, we've got precedent on this. Our binding precedent states that when a person seeks return of seized property, those actions are governed by equitable principles. And here, while Trump disclaimed that the motion was for a return of property as specified under Rule 41, he ascertained or asserted that equitable jurisdiction existed. Either way, they say that this case law says that equitable what just happened over here? So my browser just crashed, and let me close it out, see what's going on. But I think the rest of the stream should be good, so hold on a second. And Chrome is crashing, so we're going to just let both of those close out for us. And then we're going to reopen this back up. So give me a couple minutes while I reboot some of this stuff. I have no idea what just happened. I think we're still on the air, but both my browsers crashed, my Chrome and my Microsoft Edge. So I'm going to have to reboot both of these things as we speak. I must have had too many PDFs open. Part of the problem here. All right, so I lost all the chats, so I'm going to need a minute. Usually when I set the show up, it takes me about 10 minutes. But we'll see if we can do this a little bit more quickly here today while we are reopening everything up. Okay, so I've got the YouTube chat back up. Are we still on? Let's see. It says, yep, we're there. Okay, good. So YouTube's still on. So I've got that back up. Let's get Rumble back up and Locals back up. And then we'll queue some of the PDFs back up, which is a major bummer because I have a lot of stinking PDFs to go through. And I had them all queued up. Ugh! Probably the problem. Too many PDFs open. And okay. So I see C Reads over there. I see Hope Knight's over there. We've got the FBI's hacking my crap tonight. Very irritable about this. But we're going to get the 11th Circuit order back up. And we'll see. I don't know what is going on here. Like the whole computer just stopped working. And we have separate streaming systems than the computer. Okay, we're streaming independently of the computer, which is now this computer is just not working. Just outstanding. It's unbelievable. God. I guess I got to get a new computer. Chat saying your computer's dog crap. All right. Yeah, my Edge browser is just not working at all. All right, so we're going to have to just switch this thing. Over to probably just Chrome. But yeah, this is a problem. All right, so I am queuing up the remainder of the 11th Circuit, but the rest of the show is not going to be nearly as productive because of what we've got going on here. All right, so just hang tight, folks. I see everybody's bailing off. Yeah. Let me see if I can figure something else out. All right, so I'm going to have the not a fun one. All right, so let me see what I can do. Here is going to be our morning walk and talk while we figure out the rest of this. So I'm going to put on the morning walk and talk, and I'm going to work on this in a minute. Hello, my friends, and happy Thursday. Once again, I hope your week is coming to a nice, easy close. We're almost there to the end. We left off the show yesterday talking about Donald Trump and, of course, the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals ruling that came out right as we were sort of finishing up the show. And we'll dig into that a lot more later on tonight, but my understanding is it's not good for Trump, or at least that's kind of the standard thinking. You know, if it's a loss for Trump, then it's a loss for Trump. And there's some truth to that, but, you know, I'm a criminal defense lawyer. I've been in many situations representing people where there are bad odds. And, you know, oftentimes if you are in a very bad situation, if you can't overcome the facts, if you can't overcome the law, then what you can do is sort of position yourself as a victim of the process, as a victim of the system. And so it's not necessarily good for maybe, you know, one particular defendant, but you can use that maneuver to sort of blame the system for other external collateral consequences that exist outside of the criminal system, which I mean, of course, the political system, right? And I've never represented anybody like Trump or anybody, you know, remotely close to anything he's going through. But what he can do is position himself as the victim of the system, right? He can say that I have not gotten a fair shake in any of this. All right, so I think we've got some of these queued back up so we can get back into the reading. And all right, so we've got the documents back up. I don't know what the heck happened over here, but we are probably going to be in the market for a new computer. Does anybody have a good recommendation on a new computer that is not garbage? Because I need to figure that out. All right, and so we are back into the 11th Circuit opinion. And let's see what else they've got here for us. Says, as we continue on, the 11th Circuit writes, they say, a big question is whether a court should exercise its equitable jurisdiction over a case, right? And this is whether a court should grant or not grant injunctions, whether the court should have stopped the government from prosecuting Trump or not. We don't know. But the court now says we begin, as the district court did, with callous disregard, which is the foremost consideration they say that applies. So this is the most important factor in determining whether the court should exercise its equitable jurisdiction, whether it has the power to stop the prosecution or to continue the prosecution or either way. The 11th Circuit says, here, in this case, the district court concluded that Trump did not show that the United States acted in callous disregard of his constitutional rights, right? In other words, the government it didn't reach that high standard of callous disregard, which is what seems to be like a pretty high standard. They say no party contests that the district court finding in this regard, the absence of indispensable factors of that egregious disregard is just not something that exists here. They say, for our part, we cannot discern why Trump would have an individual interest in or a need for any one of the 100 documents with the classification markings. They write, classified documents are marked to show that they are classified. For instance, with their classification level. They are owned, produced by the government. We've seen that statute referenced many times. They say for this reason, a person may have access to classified information only if he has a need to know basis for the information. They say Trump has not even attempted to show that he has a need to know the information contained in the documents. Right? And we talked about that as sort of burden shifting. Right? Why does he have to show that? If the government is seizing them from him, well, why does he have to show it? Well, remember, we talked yesterday about the different standards that exist between the civil prosecution of a complaint versus the criminal prosecution of a crime, right? Two totally different standards. On one standard, we have what's called the presumption of innocence plus the burden of proof relying with the government, meaning beyond a reasonable doubt. On the other side, for a civil case, is much lower than that. It's just preponderance of the evidence, right? That's the standard. And they say Trump hasn't shown any one of those standards at all. But the question, of course, is, does that burden apply to Trump? Why would that burden apply to him and not to the other side? In this case, because it's civil, it's because he was the moving party, right? He filed the request for the special master. So Judge Raymond Deary said that the burden really relied with him. The 11th Circuit says, nor has Trump established that the current administration has waived that requirement for these documents, which of course they're not. They want Trump prosecuted. But even if Trump had, they say, in and of itself, that would not explain why Trump has an individual interest in the classified documents. The 11th Circuit says that Trump suggests that he may have declassified these documents when he was president, right? There's the may again. But the record, says the 11th Circuit, contains no evidence that any of those records were declassified. And before the special master, Trump resisted providing any evidence that he had declassified any of these documents. And there's take a look at a letter from James Trusty that we haven't seen, but apparently James Trusty is saying that we're not giving you those documents. In any event, at least for these purposes, the declassification argument, they say, is a red herring because declassifying an official document would not change its content or render it personal. So even if we assume that Trump did declassify some of the documents, that would not explain why he has a personal interest in them. This factor, they say, Trump's personal interest, or the lack thereof, weighs against exercising jurisdiction. So you see what this is Trump hasn't said anything about these documents or shown any connection or any relationship to these documents in any way. And so how can that be something that he has an interest in or has a say over if he doesn't have any interest in them? They ask whether Trump would be irreparably injured if this prosecution were to continue. And they say that by itself is not enough. They write, we cannot conclude that Trump would be irreparably harmed, and permitting the United States to retain the documents does not suggest that they will be released. So they talk about the remaining personal injury that exists. And they say, in sum, this final factor weighs, again, against the lower district court having jurisdiction. In sum, the 11th Circuit says none of the Ritchie factors favor in exercising equitable jurisdiction over this case. We were saying that Judge Aileen Cannon should not have been able to do what she did. And so consequently, they say the United States is substantially likely to succeed in showing the district court abused its discretion in exercising the jurisdiction over the motion. Now, they talk about the remainder of this being a sort of a different factor, but we'll fast forward through this and let's see what they say here at the conclusion. They say the public interest favors a stay and another factor, and for the reasons we've explained, we grant the stay pending appeal. The district court is stayed, so Judge Aileen Cannon is stayed to the extent that it enjoins the government's use of the classified documents and requires the government to give those documents over to the special master. End of the ruling from the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, and that means that Trump loses, or so the standard thinking goes. Remember, if Trump were to communicate about the status of his position on the classified documents, that might actually expose him to more criminal liability because it might show that he's got indicia, he's got intent, he's got the mens rea of knowing he had the documents and he intentionally declassified them. So I talked about this on our walk and talk this morning. I'm not so sure that this is a gigantic loss for Trump. And if they do not appeal it, I think that that is the right call. If they don't appeal it, that means that this is a win for them. If they do appeal it, that means they want the special master to get the documents. And I haven't seen anything on appeals yet. But that's the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. And let's make sure that our mind map pulls up appropriately here so that we can jump into the next thing. Because there is more to attend to. Now, the mind map is going to be in white today because for some reason the thing is not working. But the next thing we want to look at is Judge Aileen Cannon's response. Judge Aileen Cannon is the district court judge who just had the ruling come back against her, so not in her favor. Judge Aileen Cannon wrote this after the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals came out. Let's get our red pen handy. This is the order following the partial stay. The 11th Circuit granted the stay, the request from the prosecutors to stop the special master from getting those 100 documents. In a 2-page order, Judge Aileen Cannon is responding. She says, all right, everybody, we just got heard at the 11th Circuit and they ruled against us, so I guess I better tell you what's going on. Cannon says, this cause comes before the court following the 11th Circuit order granting the government's motion for a partial stay. The 11th Circuit order stays this court's order to the extent that it enjoins the government from use of the 100 documents bearing the classification markings, and that it requires the government to submit those documents over to the special master. So Judge Aileen Cannon says, all right, the manager showed up, and in accordance with the 11th Circuit's order, it is hereby ordered and adjudged as follows. The term seized material in the court's order appointing the special master is modified, and it's going to include all material seized on August 8th, except the approximately 100 documents bearing the classification markings, meaning that the special master is going to get everything, all of those 11,000 plus documents, minus those 100 documents, right? The government does not want this special master to see those things. Which is like, what's the point of the special master then, right? Isn't that what we're talking about, these confidential documents? Isn't that what we want the referee for? The Judge Cannon says, paragraph 5B1 sub B2 is stricken from the record. And also paragraph 6 of the special master order is hereby stricken. Done in orders in chambers by Judge Aileen Cannon. So just modifying that official order, and it is now going to be the special master's obligation, their duty to sort of perform their obligations under the order with these deletions. And those deletions, of course, are about the furthering criminal prosecution and about the 100 documents that the special master was going to get their hands on, but is now not going to see. And Trump's team loses the appeal, but we don't know if this is an actual loss for their criminal defense. That remains to be seen. And we will, of course, continue to cover that. We also have another document here. Now that the 11th Circuit has issued their order and the special master, Raymond J. Deary, is not going to be looking at those 100 documents, the special master authored a case management plan. And he says, okay, well, we've got some new business to attend to. And in light of these new changes, I'm going to communicate to Trump's lawyers and to the government prosecutors. This is what I want to see happen as it relates to what we can take a look at in this case. It's a 7-page document, Trump versus the United States of America. Raymond J. Deary, the special master, is authoring this order. He says, pursuant to the order appointing the special master and the order following a stay that just came out from Judge Aileen Cannon, special master hereby directs the parties to do the following. And Deary says, nothing expressed in this management plan relieves either party of any obligation imposed by the court in either order. So the judge is saying, I'm giving you my special master orders, but don't you think that you're escaping anything that you have to do from Judge Cannon. Number 1, Special Master Raymond Deary says, no later than September 26, which is coming up here pretty soon, a government official with sufficient knowledge of the matter shall submit a declaration or an affidavit as to whether the detailed property inventory represents a full and accurate extent of the property that was seized from Trump's residence at Mar-a-Lago. And no later than September 30th, Trump shall submit a declaration or an affidavit that includes each of the following factual matters. So Trump's got some homework and the government has some homework. The government's homework is to make sure that what they say they took is actually what they took and make sure that the list matches reality. Trump has some homework. Let's see what it is. His lawyers have to assemble a list of any specific items set forth in the detailed property inventory that Trump says were not seized from the premises. So if the FBI says, okay, we took this, this, and this, Trump says, no, you didn't. You didn't take that. Also, a list of any specific items that are in the property inventory that were seized, but as to which plaintiff says the description or the contents was incorrect. So Trump can say, okay, yeah, they did take that, but they didn't find Melania's underwear in Melania's closet. They found it in the laundry room, right? Or whatever. They could say, we disagree. It wasn't there, or it wasn't actually that. That description doesn't match. C, Trump and his team, they have to come up with a detailed list and a description of any item that Trump says was seized from the residence, but was not listed in the detailed property report. So we've got sort of three categories there. Stuff that was seized, but not listed. Stuff that was not seized, but listed. And then stuff that was listed and seized, but was found in an incorrect location or the description doesn't match. Judge Deary says, the special master, he says, this submission shall be Trump's final opportunity to raise any factual dispute as to the completeness and the accuracy of the detailed property inventory, right? That's it. So Trump, this is it. You're going to get a spreadsheet of all this stuff, and you better determine, oh my gosh. The whole computer just crashed. The whole computer didn't just crash, but my driver just crashed. All right, here it is. It says, no later than October 14th, the government shall submit a declaration or an affidavit from a person with sufficient knowledge of the matter responding to any factual disputes as to the completeness or the accuracy of the property inventory. So the government now, right? Trump, you got a final order, final request. Government, now it's your turn. No later than October 14th, you've also got to submit a declaration from a person with sufficient knowledge responding to any of those factual disputes that Donald Trump raised. Upon reviewing the party submissions, the undersigned will further schedule proceedings needed to resolve any of these disputes, if necessary, also an evidentiary hearing at which witnesses with knowledge will provide testimony. Okay, so if there are disputes about this, then we may get some pretty explosive hearings, right? The government may be able to subpoena some people. Trump's defense may be able to subpoena some people, and we'll actually have some legitimate, serious evidentiary hearings. To the extent that the resolution of any factual disputes identifies additional materials that should be reviewed, the undersigned will set further proceedings as needed. The identification and resolution of any factual disputes as to the completeness and accuracy will proceed concurrently with the substantive proceedings detailed below. All right. So how is this going to work mechanically? We've got some deadlines, a review of the seized materials. The following deadlines and procedures shall govern the parties and the special master's review of the materials. No later than 9/23, the parties shall agree upon and contract with a document review vendor who's going to review the seized materials and put them in electronic form. September 26th, the government's going to make available all copies of the special master in electronic format and give them Bates numbers. So just basically put them into evidence is basically what this says. The government shall also provide an electronic spreadsheet that correlates the numbers and make sure the privilege review team has properly analyzed everything. Trump shall provide the special master and the government with an annotated copy of a spreadsheet described above that specifies for each document whether Trump asserts any of the following. Oh, so this spreadsheet is going to have to be really juicy. Annotated copy. Do any of these documents have attorney-client privilege? Do any of these documents have work product privilege? How about executive privilege that prohibits review of the document within the executive branch? And we talked about this previously. We had our different buckets, our different categories of issues, right? That different categories that could be used differently. And this has many other additional categories. The executive privilege that prohibits the dissemination of documents. The document is a presidential record, and the document is a personal record, right? So we had several buckets, but this is even more robust than what we had. They say Trump's designations shall be on a document-by-document basis. So he has to go through that spreadsheet, and each row, he's got to file them into one of these categories. Say, yep, that was attorney-client privilege, this was executively privileged, and so on. For any document that Trump designates as privileged or personal, Trump shall include a brief statement explaining the basis for the designation. Trump shall also provide his designations to the government on a rolling basis. For each set that Trump provides to the government, the parties are to confer and attempt to resolve any of these disputes. No later than 7 calendar days after each service, the parties shall submit to the special master a log. The log shall have each party's position on the dispute. They say special master understands that the government has already provided Trump with an initial set of documents for review. Trump is directed to review and prioritize those lists. They say Trump shall serve the government with its final and complete log of designations. And here's a summary of the due dates. So Trump serves their designations on these dates, 9/26, 9/30, 10/7, 10/14, and then they submit logs after the fact. So it's sort of a back and forth. We send you a spreadsheet, you send us a spreadsheet. And then anything that we disagree about goes up to the special master for conversations. It says that once the court has reviewed the special master's recommendations and ruled on any objections, then the special master and the court will consider Trump's request for a return of property. We know that Trump is paying for this, and so let's see what the bill is going to look like. The undersigned has determined that this requires Honorable James Orenstein for help, and it requires also Judge Orenstein. Yeah, Judge Orenstein is going to help resolve all of this. The court also needs staff, and so the staff is going to be, billing for this. The parties may submit comments on the staffing and compensation plan, but the case management plan shall be filed on the public docket. Of course it is, and we are reading it right now. The next status conference for this matter scheduled October 6, 2022 at 2 p.m. So that was the order signed by Raymond Dearie that is laying out the plan. And it's going to be very interesting to see because Trump has sort of a big obligation there. Trump has to communicate about the position that he has as to each one of those different documents. And so we are going to, of course, continue to cover all of that and more. But let's take a look now at some of the response that was out there. We are pulling up our mind map here. And let's see what else we've got. So Donald Trump was on Sean Hannity's show, and he was being interviewed. Let me pause here for a quick minute and make sure that we are still live. And get the chats back open again. Because Trump was on the Sean Hannity show, and he had some interesting things to say. Donald Trump shows up onto Sean Hannity's show talking about Mar-a-Lago, and he explains in detail what the process was.
So let me ask you this question, because I think this is the next logical question, because the President of the United States, you, unlike, say, Hillary Clinton in her case, right, a president has the power to declassify.
Correct.
Okay. You had said on Truth Social a number of times you did declassify.
I did declassify, yes.
Okay. Is there a process? What was your process to declassify?
There doesn't have to be a process, as I understand it. There's different people say different things, but as I understand, there doesn't have to be. If you're the President of the United States, you can declassify just by saying it's declassified, even by thinking about it, because you're sending it to Mar-a-Lago or to wherever you're sending it. And
now he's getting skewered over this comment, but what he's sort of implying is that by ordering or by taking action, by doing something, by demonstrating something, you have obviously made that decision. It's like if you take a box, if you say, okay, this is a box of classified documents, and I take that box of classified documents out, right? You're sort of saying, I'm declassifying that document. It's like your action is demonstrating the thing, right? It's sort of what he's getting at. Now, left, of course, is skewering him over that. Oh, he just think it? Like he just telepathically transmitted this to somebody else? And everybody should just read his mind? That's not what he's saying, right? He's saying it's like, if you take the trash out to the trash can, then you took the trash out to the trash can. You didn't have to say it. You didn't have to order anybody to do it. You didn't have to communicate or fill out a form. You just kind of did it, right? And there are things like that happen in law and in business. And what he's saying is sort of that, right? My action is demonstrating that there was a declassification process that occurred, and it doesn't need to be this big convoluted thing where we're filling out a bunch of forms. So here he is continuing on with Sean.
It doesn't have to be a process. There can be a process, but there doesn't have to be. You're the president. You make that decision. So when you send it, it's declassified. I declassified everything. Now, I declassified things, and we were having a lot of problems with NARA. You know, NARA is a radical left group of people running that thing. And when you send documents over there, I would say there's a very good chance that a lot of those documents will never be seen again.
Wow.
There's also a lot of speculation because of what they did, the severity of the FBI coming and raiding Mar-a-Lago. Were they looking for the Hillary Clinton emails that were deleted, but they are around someplace? Were they looking for the spying on Trump's?
You're not saying you had it.
No, they may be saying, they may have thought that it was in there.
Okay.
And a lot of people said the only thing that would give the kind of severity that they showed by actually coming in and raiding with many, many people is the Hillary Clinton deal, the Russia stuff, or, I mean, there are a number of things. The spying on Trump's campaign. So they spied on my campaign.
Spied on my campaign, says Trump. And that was responsible for a whole litany of issues that he had to deal with, right? Including the Carter Page investigation, multiple different impeachments. And he's saying, you know, maybe the FBI that has a history of being highly problematic in my administration, both prior to him even becoming president, while he was president, and after he was president, all sorts of incredible problems with them. And so basically he's explaining that this is an overdue library book prosecution that wouldn't have happened to any other president, and it's happening because it's Donald Trump. I think there's a lot of truth to that. Trump also was telling this fun story when he was talking with Hannity, and Trump breaks the news that when the FBI was raiding his residence at Mar-a-Lago, they took his will, he thinks, in addition to Melania's and Barron's and other stuff that they were rummaging around through in the Mar-a-Lago residence. His will?
Part two of this question is this. They took your passport, they took your medical records, they took your tax records, and probably the scariest part to me, and this is why a broad warrant like this to me would be dangerous. We do have a Fourth Amendment. They also took, 500 pages of attorney-client privilege information? Have you gotten that back, by the way?
A lot. I don't know. I really don't know. They took a lot. I think they took my will.
Whoa.
I found out yesterday. I said, where is it?
Am I in it?
I think they took my will.
Am I in it, Sean?
It could cause a lot of problems.
No.
That could cause a lot of problems if that gets published from people that won't be so happy or maybe will be very happy.
Okay.
But no, I think they took my will. No, it's a horrible thing.
Took his will. Sean Hannity says, am I in it? Could I be in it? Does Sean want to be in it? I don't think that anybody who's going to be in that will is going to be looked at favorably under the FBI. Maybe that's why they want it, so they can go take all the money away from they should send it over to Letitia James and see what she does with it. So that's Donald Trump responding to the raid at Mar-a-Lago. And of course, the 11th Circuit handing out what many people say is not a good ruling, but we'll have to see. If Trump doesn't appeal it to the Supreme Court, I think that means that his criminal defense lawyers are saying maybe it's better that we don't actually have a special master who is overlooking all of these things, because they would require you to take a hard line on documents that we don't want you to take a hard line on. So we'll continue to follow. Thank you for subscribing and liking this video while you're watching out there. I know we've had some technical difficulties today, but I do appreciate it. All right, we've got another segment here, and we've got Mike Lindell. And so we'll take a quick look at this. Mike Lindell sues the federal government, the DOJ, Merrick, Garland, and everybody over there in the Biden administration for seizing his cell phone and for raiding him when he was there at a Hardee's just trying to have a nice meal. Now, we are going to take a quick look at the complaint that Lindell filed against the DOJ. More specifically, I want to take a look at the search warrant that was submitted as an attachment, an exhibit to the complaint, because it shows us what the FBI is doing, the types of searches that they are conducting as they continue to sort of go after all of Donald Trump's allies everywhere they turn. CNN had a very interesting interpretation of this entire saga. They published this, and listen to how they call this guy, Mike Lindell. They call him a pillow salesman. Can you believe this? It's very rude. It's sort of pejorative. First of all, we all have to sleep on pillows, and the better the pillow, the better the sleep, as we know. And so it's kind of pejorative. CNN Politics, it's not an opinion piece. CNN reporter, Crime and Justice, says, pillow salesman and Trump ally Mike Lindell challenging the FBI search and seizure of his phone. Mike Lindell, they say, CEO of MyPillow, prominent backer of former Trump, alleges that there was an illegal search. And what we're knowing now is that a lot of this seems like it's coming about from Colorado and some fights over the election machines. Remember that Mike Lindell was somebody who was funding a lot of these lawsuits. In fact, I'm sort of sure that he was funding the Kerry Lake lawsuit that was existing here in Arizona. Justice Department got a warrant. It was all approved. They went to go and search through his phones, and we covered a lot of that video here. But they are really sort of insulting to him in this article. Is if you read the full article, it's sort of pillow salesman, loser pillow salesman and Trump ally. But Mike Lindell, of course, has been a big truth fighter, somebody who speaks for a lot of people in America who have a lot of questions about what's going on in this country. And so Mike Lindell filed a complaint against the DOJ. Here is what it looks like. Let's get our red pen queued up. Normally I do this before the show starts and before everything crashes, but here we are right now. I got to get that right. Nice, big, and thick red pen. Mike Lindell from MyPillow, he sues the United States of America, including Merrick Garland and Christopher Wray at the FBI, a complaint for the return of property and an equitable relief. You see here several things. It is, number one, saying that the government violated his rights that were protected under the First, Fourth, Fifth, Sixth Amendments of the Constitution. And he wants the return of his cell phone. He wants the government stopped from accessing any data that they took on his cell phone. And they want the prohibition of any release of any information by the defendants that they may have accessed after executing the warrant. We talk about jurisdiction and venue, names the parties, of course, CEO of MyPillow, defendant is Merrick Garland at the DOJ, also the U.S. Attorney out of the District of Minnesota, FBI Director Christopher Wray, they're all named in here. Quickly on the background, they say the warrant was issued by a judge, authorized to be executed on September 7th. Morning on September 13th is when Mr. Lindell drove from his home, went with a friend to go duck hunting in Iowa. And after finishing their trip that same morning, they began driving home. In the late morning, Lindell pulled his truck through a drive-through window at a Hardee's restaurant in Mankato, Minnesota. Lindell did not at any time prior to being detained inform defendants where he was going, that he was hunting, and the route that he would be driving back, and he made an impromptu stop at a fast food restaurant. They say defendants would have had no idea where Mr. Lindell's locations were. Upon information and belief, they think that they used a cell site location information and tracking device to locate Mr. Lindell without first securing a search warrant. So they don't know how the FBI tracked him down. They say he didn't tell anybody about where he was going, and he was just on a hunting trip, and the FBI still tracked him down. How'd they do that? As Mr. Lindell was going through the drive-thru, an unmarked vehicle operated by a federal agent in street clothes abruptly moved in front of his truck, blocking any movement forward. Immediately after the first vehicle operated by a federal agent appeared, a second unmarked vehicle pulled to the right of Mr. Lindell's truck and prevented him from driving around the first vehicle that was blocking his way. At the same time, a third unmarked vehicle operated by a federal agent in street clothes pulled directly behind Mr. Lindell's truck, making it impossible for him to back up through the drive-thru lane. Okay, so he's at the drive-thru, and they're blocking him front and back. Not knowing that the individuals were federal agents, he began fearing for his lives. He was going to ram the vehicles and try to escape. Before taking the action, he said, "Who are you people? What do you want?" One of the individuals who exited that vehicle told Mr. Lindell that the people who surrounded him were the FBI. When Lindell asked how the agents said, "Can you show me investigations?" the four of them did so. In what appears to be an effort to elicit allegedly incriminating evidence, they asked him questions about a variety of topics, including Dominion, Tina Peters, Colorado, Doug Frank, and other information that was posted on frankspeech.com. They asked him about Dominion's build software and other things. These questions lasted 25 to 30 minutes. And throughout the events described above, the federal agents deprived him of his freedom. He wasn't allowed to move. They questioned him for 30 minutes. They had no authority to detain him, and after questioning, FBI agents said that unless he gave him the phone, they're going to get a warrant and they're going to get him anyways. Lindell called his lawyer. They talked for an extended period of time, and Mr. Lindell agreed ultimately to turn the phone over to the agents. They detained him for 45 minutes. The cell phone is owned by MyPillow. MyPillow uses Verizon. Data collected on the cell phone includes attorney-client privileged information. They say that Lindell was never asked by the defendants for the subject cell phone or any other data. They just came and took it. They just got a warrant and came and took it. They say Lindell does not know about the affidavit used to obtain the warrant, and the government took no action whatsoever to obtain the cell phone through less intrusive means. They just came and raided him at a drive-thru. They say he has not given consent for any of this use. They say they think that the allegations arise out of some election conversation that took place regarding Dominion and other things during the election. And they argue that the warrant was obtained in bad faith. Those that were involved were applying for and serving the warrant were aware that Lindell relied on his cell phone. And so you can see some of the arguments here saying that Lindell had his First Amendment violated, saying that that's his free speech and he's relying on that, and that this is trying to chill Mr. Lindell's First Amendment freedom of speech, right? He uses that phone to publish his videos and to publish his messages to his audience, and they took that away from him. Violation of the Fourth Amendment. You can see this is probably going to be about the generality of the search warrant. Unreasonable search and seizure, probably here. Seizing the entire, they're calling this analogous to seizing a person's entire home, and that they're violating their own policies. Let's see what they're asking for at the conclusion of this. They ask specifically for a declaration that Lindell's rights were violated, that Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment was violated. They want the warrant declared invalid. They want the cell phone to be returned to Mike Lindell. They want a restraining order against the government from using the cell phone. And they want the defendant to provide them with a copy of the warrant. Now, we'll see if any of this happens. I am the chief executive officer of MyPillow, says Mike Lindell. And this is a complaint that was signed by Andrew Parker, somebody out of Minneapolis, Minnesota, and also Kurt Olson, to be admitted pro hoc vice. Alan Dershowitz is also signing on to this of counsel for Mike Lindell. And he had a statement that he came out with previously. Before we get there, let's take a look at this affidavit. That is, hang on, I don't think, did I pull that one open? Here's the exhibit. This is the Exhibit A in Mike Lindell's lawsuit is the search and seizure warrant. You can see it was originally sealed by order of the court, but it's been unsealed since this case is now progressing. There are two attachments that the government wanted. You see attachment A and attachment B. That's what the law enforcement officers were authorized to go and get. And so we'll take a look at both of those. But it was all commanded to be done, executed before September 21st. Of course, that happened. The judge who signed off on it is Tony Lang. Now, this is the attachment. The location to be searched. The property to be searched is the person named Mike Lindell. And if you don't know what Mike Lindell looks like, well, here's a nice silhouette for you, courtesy of the FBI and the DOJ. It looks just like him. They say He is a male born June 1961, approximately 6 feet tall. Social security number and any items on his person is all fair game to be searched. A photograph of Lindell appears below. Now, it's silhouette. I don't know if it's just a copy of a copy or whatever this is, but it is literally a joke, right? That they would put it might be an actual photo. It might be a Xerox of a Xerox, or I don't know if it's just a silhouette, but it looks like a silhouette. The physical cell phone assigned here is the number there. That's the Lindell cell phone. And they're saying that go find that guy. Here's a picture. Go get him and go seize everything that's on him. All records and information on the cell phone that constitute fruits and instrumentalities of these two crimes, right? And this is what we were looking at even in the Trump case. We were trying to say, what are they trying to prosecute Trump for? What are they going after him for? Here's a couple of examples. Identity theft. This is being listed in Mike Lindell's case. Investigating the crime of identity theft. Intentional damage to a protected computer. Another violation. And conspiracy to commit identity theft or intentionally damage a connected computer. Violations involve a number of people, including Mike Lindell, all subjects of the areas to be searched. And here they want anything that's come out after November 1, 2020, including all records relating to damage to any Dominion system, all records related to any BIOS on any computerized system, which is the operating system, sort of the startup operating system. It's before your actual, Windows or Apple starts up, right? You've got a BIOS in your motherboard, which I probably need a new one. Says all records and information relating to the attachment of any peripheral, all records relating to the optical disk drive, all records relating to any of the codes, all records relating to any authorizations or lack of authorizations to modify the systems. And you can see what this is, right? It's all Dominion related stuff. Also, they can get evidence of who used, owned, or controlled the Lindell cell phone, who put software on the cell phone, on the Lindell cell phone, anybody else who controlled, touched the cell phone, evidence of computer forensic programs on the cell phone, encryption keys, volatile data, everything, right? This is what a cell phone search warrant looks like. It's everything that's on there. Bookmark, favorite web pages. Your cell phone is basically like your life now, right? Everything's on there. Emails, banking, text messages, paramours, the whole thing, right? All entered into the internet search history. They want it all. Evidence indicating how and when Lindell's cell phone was accessed. The term computer includes Lindell's cell phone. They want it all. This warrant authorizes the execution of this, and it says here, executing law enforcement personnel, are authorized to depress the fingerprints or thumbprints of Mike Lindell onto the Touch ID or the fingerprint sensor in order to gain access. So if you have one of those fingerprint sensors on there and they use that, you use that to get access to your phone, executing law enforcement personnel can depress the fingerprint of Mike Lindell onto the cell phone in order to gain access to the contents of the cell phone. Law enforcement personnel may also hold the Lindell cell phone in front of the face of Mike Lindell to activate the facial recognition feature, or hold it to activate the facial recognition feature to search the contents of the phone. So to think that phone secured, the FBI just shoves it right in front of your face and they get access to it. So that is the attachment that Mike Lindell submitted, FBI labeling this individual as a very dangerous person who is a criminal mastermind. And of course, Mike Lindell is just, another in a long list of criminal prosecutions that are taking place in order to eviscerate their political opponents. So we'll continue on. Alan Dershowitz is of counsel for Mr. Lindell, and he was on the Lindell show, and he was asked about what the next steps are in this battle against the DOJ, filing this complaint, demanding the return of the cell phone. What can they do? Here's Dersh.
Issue the subpoena for the telephone so that they could get and search the telephone completely. And what we're seeking is what President Trump got in the Mar-a-Lago case, the appointment of a special investigator to to look into this, or return of the cell phone, because the search was a general search, the kind of general search that the framers of our Constitution wanted to specifically outlaw in the Fourth Amendment. So,
that is true. I don't disagree with him there. I think that the Fourth Amendment has been dumped all over by everybody in this country, Republicans and Democrats. They don't really care much about it, either one of them. But he is great. He is saying that this was a general search, and they sort of have a big, broad search. And I think that most search warrants and most searches are way overbroad. But as to his point about the special master, I'm not so sure that that is something that is going to fly. Why? Well, Mike Lindell is not a former president. He's not a former elected anything. He doesn't have things like presidential executive privilege over this. He's sort of being treated like a regular criminal defendant, and you lose certain powers. And I highly doubt that a judge is going to grant a special master, but of course, I'm not Alan Dershowitz. We'll see what happens in this case. And thank you for subscribing. Thank you for liking the video. And thank you for following the work that we're doing here. I appreciate your support. All right, we've got one final segment left to get into on the day. And let's see if I can get my... I was trying to get the... So I think I figured out what the problem was. I had some weird program that was running in very, very heavy mode of memory, and I stopped it and the computer is working again. So I don't know what that was all about. But all right, so we've got one final segment here today before we jump into your comments, and let's get into it. A MAGA murder allegedly took place. Caylor Ellingson run down by a car. This gentleman here named Shannon Brandt charged with vehicular homicide and leaving the scene of an accident. We've got the probable cause statement. We've got the criminal complaint that we are going to take a look at. But let's get some background over from Townhall about this young man who is unfortunately no longer with us. May he rest in peace. Caylor Ellingson, who was killed, apparently because of his political disposition. This comes over from Townhall. The alleged killer freed after confessing to mowing down the teen in a political argument. Suspected killer in North Dakota is accused of mowing down this young man, Caylor Ellingson, aged 18, in his car. Apparently a politically motivated attack resulting in his death. The man who did it charged with the crime, 41-year-old Shannon Joseph Brandt out of Glenfield. He was let out, $50,000 bond. County sheriff verified he's back on the streets until his next court appearance. He started scrubbing his Facebook account ever since he got out. You can see some of the booking photos have come in here from Mia Cathell on Twitter, so recommend to follow over there. But you see several of those booking photos, and we're going to take a look at the actual filings that came out, the probable cause affidavit, as well as other testimony. Let's go to those right now, in fact. So let's get those queued up. And we'll close that one out. Here is the probable, yes, okay. And let's get our red pen going before we jump in. This is the criminal complaint against Shannon Joseph Brandt for the apparently, allegedly political killing of a young man named Caylor out of North Dakota. You can see the Foster County State's attorney is charging him with several different crimes. One count of criminal vehicular homicide, a felony involving a motor vehicle, and it is in violation of the law there. It's a Class A felony, which I presume is the top level felony. On or about September 18th in North Dakota, the defendant committed the crime, causing the death of another. The death was committed when the individual was struck with a vehicle, causing his death, resulting in the charge of a Class A felony. Very generic statute. Died, vehicle was involved, not much to that one. Count 2, duty in an accident involving death or an injury with death. So this is the leaving the scene, right? If you are in an accident and you cause injury to somebody and you leave them there to die, you may be charged with that, kind of a Good Samaritan law. On September 18, 2022, they say that Mr. Brandt drove a vehicle involved in an accident resulting in the death of a person and negligently failed to immediately stop or to return with the vehicle as close as possible to the scene and to give information and render aid as required. Very, actually pretty common statute, sort of a leaving the scene of an accident statute. You probably have something very similar in your state. We do in Arizona. That offense was committed when he failed to remain at the scene and fulfill their requirements, guilty of a Class B felony for that offense, all against the peace and dignity out of North Dakota. Complainant, prosecutor here, signed, submitted September 19, 2022. Now, the penalty section tells us what the maximum penalties will be. Of course, these are pretty hefty given the fact that they're very high penalties. Class A felony, meaning high-level felonies. Class A, 20 years. Class B, 10 years. Violation of the law, all sorts of collateral consequences. Collateral consequences means, if you are, let's say if you are an illegal migrant and you get convicted of a crime, one of the collateral consequences might be deportation. Collateral consequence of being convicted of a DUI, it's criminal. It might result in your driver's license, which is civil, being suspended. That is a collateral consequence. So obviously, if he's in prison for a long period of time, there will be a lot of those. Same thing with collateral consequences for felonies, right? Like you lose your right to possess a firearm and right to vote, those types of things. Submitted, approved by the state prosecutor. Her name is Kara Brinster. This is the criminal complaint which will initiate the prosecution against Shannon Brandt. We also have the affidavit which details the actual incident that took place. And so let's cue this one up and get here. The Declaration of Probable Cause, Shannon Brandt charged with vehicular homicide in the killing alleged of a young Caylor. We see here the officer who responded to the scene out of North Dakota is Christopher L. Allan. He says, I'm a licensed police officer, and I've been doing so in this jurisdiction for 9 years. We're in Foster County. It's September 18th. The time is 2:35 a.m. They're in an alleyway near Johnson Street and Jones Avenue, right off of McHenry. So there's this little alleyway back there in Foster, North Dakota. The individual charged with the crime was born in 1980, non-Hispanic. The driver of the vehicle was stopped in Glenfield, which is a different town. He was interviewed. He was placed under arrest. Charged with the following crimes: vehicular homicide and leaving the scene of an accident causing death. Now we get to the probable cause statement. The officer writes, on September 18, 2022, I, Trooper Allan, was contacted by another sergeant named Sergeant Cashin, and I was requested to respond to the northern Foster County for a fatality hit-and-run accident. I responded from my residence north of Jamestown, and according to the state radio logs, the reporting party, identified as Shannon Brandt, stated he struck a pedestrian because the pedestrian was threatening him. Brandt stated the pedestrian called some people and Brandt was afraid they were coming to get him. Brandt admitted to state radio that he hit the pedestrian and the pedestrian was part of a Republican extremist group. Once on scene, I met with Foster County Sheriff Johnson and was shown the area of the incident. Limited evidence was observed in the nighttime. A first responder who was first on scene was interviewed and showed where the male pedestrian's body was approximately located. This responder, identified as Jerome Short, stated that the family of the pedestrian showed up along the family of Brandt shortly after his arrival. Oh my God. Sergeant Cashin and Foster County Deputy Cruz responded to Brandt's parents' house in rural McHenry and then to Brandt's house in Glenfield. There, Brandt was interviewed by Sergeant Cashin outside his residence, and he admitted to consuming alcohol prior to the incident. Brandt admitted to striking the pedestrian with his car because he had a political argument with the pedestrian and believed the pedestrian was calling people to come and get him. Brandt admitted to leaving the scene of the incident and returning shortly after, where he called 911. Brandt did not remain on the scene till law enforcement arrived and ultimately returned to his residence. Brandt was placed under arrest for DUI by Sergeant Cashin and transported to the Stutsman County Jail. Brandt was advised of his Miranda rights and his implied consent advisory, consented to a chemical breath test, and the results of the chemical breath test were above the legal limit of 0.08. Now, he probably went home because his BAC was significantly higher than that, and the part of the reason to go home was to wash out some of that alcohol before he had to do that blood test. It was probably significantly higher than 0.08, just given the fact that he was still positive. I don't know how much time elapsed between the time he left and the time he came back, but they do sort of a poor job with times in this, right? They're not really detailed on the times. We have a date on 9/18. Okay. According to radio logs, he does all this investigation and then he shows up, but we don't know what time any of this was. And time is pretty important for DUI. Now, the pedestrian was identified as at the Carrington Hospital as Caylor. I met with his parents at Grace City. I asked what time Caylor contacted them, to which Caylor's mother informed me that Caylor called her at approximately 2:41 hours. She stated that Caylor asked if they knew Brandt, to which she stated her parents did not, but they believed that Caylor did. Caylor's mother stated that she told Caylor she was on her way to get him. A short time later, Caylor called, again stated that he or they were chasing him, and after this, she could not reach him. Brandt's phone call to the state radio was logged at approximately 2:55 hours. Pronounced deceased at the Carrington Hospital. Oh my God, it's just one of the most... it's just one of the worst things ever, you know. All right, so mom calls young 18-year-old son who got ran over by a crazed person who thinks that Republican extremists are after him. I wonder where that came from. And mom calls, son's dying there on the side of the road, shows up, and he is just dead. So, you know, all right. So that is just one of the worst things that you could ever imagine. Let's continue on. We see now that Mr. Shannon Brandt was booked into jail. The bond was posted out of Foster County, $50,000, and he has been released. Local news got some coverage on this, and they are communicating that the judge had a conversation with him during the initial arraignment, and he is sort of shocked. He doesn't really understand what happened and what is happening. And I have represented people like this. My law firm has represented people in situations like this, not a political involvement situation, but in hit and runs and vehicular homicides. And he deserves the presumption of innocence like anybody else. And honestly, I feel bad for him for having his mind so twisted by the disgusting people who are in charge of our government to inculcate his mind that it's okay to run somebody over because they're extremist Republicans. Here he is.
I don't understand the differences.
41-year-old Shannon Brandt had a tough time understanding the charges against him, vehicular homicide and leaving the scene of a deadly accident. A judge ordered Brandt held on $50,000 cash, which he objected, saying he's not a flight risk.
I have a job and a life and a house and things that I don't exactly want to see, you know, go by the wayside. Family that are very important to me.
Yeah, family and lives that are very important. And, you know, his life's over.
I don't understand that.
And an 18-year-old kid's life's over, all for politics, because our psycho president is out there calling half the country extremist Republicans. Insane. And it's just horrible, right? It's absolutely, it breaks my heart all over the place. So what a joke. All right. That is it for us today, my friends. Let's see what you have to say and more. I know we've had some super chats come in. I know we've got some questions and comments over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. And so we are going to get to those right now as soon as I can cue all this stuff up and get my bearings straight, because my goodness, what a doozy of a show, technologically speaking. All right, so let's get these queued up. We have watchingthewatchers.locals.com. They are over there. John Allen's in the house. Shout out to Savvy Sue. Radicy's over there. And I'm queuing up these comments threads. I'm also queuing up some of the super chat threads. I saw there was a Get Rob a New Computer Fund, which is very nice. Thank you, everybody. It was a weird program on my my task manager that was eating up like 94% of my RAM. So I don't know what that was. It might be some malware. It might be something that just had an error. I don't know what it was. But very frustrating because I don't like those technical problems, as you know. All right. And so let's see what came in from our friends over on YouTube. We had some super chats come in to start the day out. Elder Claiborne was here, says, oops, wrong button. Well, that's okay. I mean, you can hit that button, you know. It's okay if you hit the wrong button on a super chat. No problems there. John McGarvey says, let's get a computer fund going. And KB says, new computer for Rob. This computer is supposed to be pretty decent. It's got like a GeForce RTX something in it. It's got like 16 gigabytes of RAM. I bought it, I don't know, maybe like 2 years ago now that I think about it. But maybe I do need a new computer. How long has it been? All right. So thank you for contributing to that. I will certainly use it for technology. That's what I spend most of the money on here is new gear. All right. And so that is amazing. Thank you, my friends over on YouTube. We're going to do a quick refresh over on the locals chat so that we can get into these. What did I do with them? All right. Here they are. All right. And so we're clicking a couple other buttons to get to the first page. Shout outs to my friends over on YouTube. I see Zulu's in the house. Says my fine people on both sides though. Ma fine. Lean says, leave Bean alone, which is a good one. All right. So we've got the locals comments here. We're pulling them up. We're about to attend to them with haste. J-Rock says, J-Rock is here. He says, I'm reading the wiki on Black Swan theory. It's a cool word. It means a rare event. Yeah, it's actually J-Rock. I mean, if you want to blow your whole stinking mind, the books that you're going to want to read are from Nicholas Nassim Taleb. He has a book called The Black Swan. It's one of the best books of all time. In fact, his entire Incerto compendium is right here, and I own them all on audio. They're really great books. Nicholas Nassim Taleb, 2 books I'd highly recommend. Anti-Fragile, actually 3. The Black Swan, and number 3, Skin in the Game. I think The Black Swan and Anti-Fragile are the best on audio. The Skin in the Game is read by a different narrator, and it's not as good, unfortunately. Vientica says, have a good stream, Rob. I'll be watching you later at 1.5x. Well, you're going to see a lot of technical difficulties there, V, but hopefully you can tolerate it. Thanks for being here, V. Hopefully you're having an amazing time wherever it is you are. Tricky's in the house. Tricky says, the people in charge are ruthless savages. I'm happy to rise above them, even though it's hard because, my gosh, they are constantly trying to ruin the greatest president I've seen in my lifetime. But I rise above and take names and kick dragon. Don't let them see you downtrodden, not even the slightest frown. Give it all you've got and don't let these derelicts deter you. They will meet their maker. Carry on. Good to see you, Tricky. Nice comment. Thank you for the inspiration. I was irritated today, but I feel better. Here we have Words Mean Things. Says, hey, everybody. I won't be with you tonight. I have a family coming from out of town to meet my beautiful, wonderful, adorable, perfect in every way, new grandson. Woo! All right, that's amazing. Words Mean Things. Congratulations to the newest edition. I'll definitely catch it later, though. Got to get my truth fix. Happy watching. Very sweet. Grandchildren. Tricky says, I hope I get some in the next year or two. Yeah, so does my mom. TOS Forever says, thoughtful Thursday to all the watchers. Thoughtful Thursday to you, Thunder. We also had this one come in from Former. He says, since New York and the DOJ have both filed complaints against Trump, if Trump wins, can he get attorney's fees? For the civil case, they could be entertained, not for anything criminal. That is one of the remedies to prevent abuse of the system, right? Yeah, it's attorney's fees and sanctions. I would love to hear that Letitia had to write a check for Trump. I'm not sure that's going to happen. You still have to get a New York judge to authorize it. Ed J says, hello, Rob, and thanks for all you do to keep us informed. It's my pleasure, Ed. Thanks for being here and having a conversation with me. Otherwise, there's not much to talk about. Says, with appellate or 11th Circuit, could Trump force an en banc hearing on front of the entire court? And he could. Yes, I think he could do that, right? The way the courts of appeals work is they have sort of a big pool of judges, and then the judges draw like from a hat, and they get assigned to certain issues that come up, but it's not the full court, right? So it's like if you go to the Supreme Court, it'd be only like if 3 of the judges ruled on a case, and you had to say, well, wait a minute, what does the full court say? And so I think he could still do that. I still believe the documents were planted based on that famous photo. He couldn't declassify those. Also, the feds themselves likely had their own malware on Lindell's phone. He could get that information as part of his suit. He could also carefully check the phone if and when he gets it back. Yeah. I think that's a good comment, Ed. I don't know what they're going to do with the Court of Appeals. I'll be very curious to see. Based on the Court of Appeals, based on what they do there, we'll know what they think of the strength of their case to some degree. 3 Girlie says, do you think the appeals court got to see the unredacted affidavit? I'm sure you've already covered this, but this is a preliminary injunction, right? So this isn't the appeals court making a final ruling. I think they're only ruling on the stay pending the appeal. Let me make sure I'm saying that right. Let me make sure I'm reading your sentence your comment before I start answering, which I always do. Does this mean that Trump's team can then get in front of the appeals court, argue their case better, and have it come out his way? So is it ruling a temporary setback, or is it something that they could not overcome? So again, it's a good question. And I don't know the mechanics of all the appeals and how the technicality portions of it work. I always joke. I say the appeals process is for the really, really smart lawyers who really like books and reading and citations, right? And so there are mechanics to it. And I'm not an appeals expert person, but I think the question is really going to be about what does Trump want to do, right? Does he want to go and sort of go appeal to the full court? Does he even want to? Part of me thinks that he's okay with this ruling, and we haven't heard from him on this yet. But as I said, if he has to comment on the classified documents, that exposes his underbelly to criminal charges. So is the ruling a temporary setback? I don't know. I think it might be a victory for them because they don't have to answer questions about those confidential documents because it has been taken out of the purview of the special master's jurisdiction. But I don't know, right? It could be that. It could just be a blind spot because we don't know. I don't even know if Trump knows what the documents are. It's a good question, Three Girlies. Zach says, sounds to me like Joe Biden wants to check out those books. He's just mad Trump hasn't returned them yet. Yeah, I mean, maybe there's some good books in there, What do presidents read? Like maybe he's got like George Washington's journal or something. It's got all the secret America's treasures in there. Then you have to sort of side with Joe Biden. You're like, yeah, go get the book. Yeah, I want that book. Yeah, send the FBI. Yes, it's Benjamin Franklin's journal. Go get it. Go get it. Sounds to me like Joe Biden wants to do that. Matt's mom is here, says, thank you, Rob, for the time and energy you put into this, into the never-ending government TDS. Lady Justice doesn't carry a political party membership card. She wears a blindfold and carries a balance scale. Did the DOJ lock her up and toss out the key? I think so. You're right about that. And I get so irritated, about what I see. Good to see you, Terry. Three Girlie says, would you have wanted Trump to sit down for the interview? Couldn't his responses in that interview be used against him in court? When he says, I declassified everything, if there were documents, then they were declassified. Sounds like he's using statements to get in a lot of trouble. Yes, Three Girlies. Shout out to the youngest girlie. Yes. Yes, it makes me nervous. Now, again, I don't think Trump cares. I don't think Bannon cares. Their strategy on this whole thing, it's a political prosecution. They're going to put up a political defense. That's it. They don't care. Indict him. Indict Bannon. Put him in jail. He doesn't care. He thinks the Republicans are going to win. And the tables are going to turn the other way. But yes, I've been like not panicked, but like nervous when I see Trump on True Social posting things. Like it makes my criminal defense lawyer skin just crawl. I'm like, stop, because he keeps saying things like this. And I know that, it's sort of jokey, right? Like a lot of it's jokey and it's Trump. He's being Trump. But at the same time, it's like, bro, do you know what these people are trying to do to you? They'll give you the death penalty, man. But his defense is just a win. We'll see if it works out. Cheryl says, Locals is up on tablet. YouTube is up on my TV, which is great. So I'm streaming now through separate hardware. So I could reboot this whole computer and we could still be streaming, which is pretty cool, right? Otherwise, that little crash would have taken us out last time. Ray KOK says, remember when we used to watch TV and a little music would come on and the TV would say, we'll be right back due to technical difficulties. He needs one of those. Yeah, I need one of those to deal with like my 1950s broken technology. TOS Forever says, I'm staying. My Safari browser on Rumble has the connection. Hey, Rob, I hear that some people who are in different countries who are going to help me. Former says, I had an old 386 computer with a 256K hard drive. Yeah, I had what was the 19.9 baud modem? One of those 5.25 floppies. I could donate that to you. I'm good. Ray K says, if I thumbs down, then thumbs up, does that help? Yeah, it's like turning it off and turning it on again. Ray K says, yikes, my cornea. Sergeant Bob says, I'm so speechless over these classified issues that I'm not going to try to run my mouth off today. Well, Sergeant Bob, we have to know ourselves. And that's a nice, astute observation. Yeah, sometimes we got to just control ourselves. I'm the same way. Former says, could former POTUS Trump paper the entire DOJ with subpoenas? I guess they could only offer that after the indictment. I mean, he could, right? He could sort of do the Steve Bannon approach. Steve Bannon, remember, he subpoenaed the entire J6 committee, but there was no real rhyme or reason, no real support from the courts to issue those subpoenas. So I'm not sure that he could try. I'm not sure the courts would grant him. Raymond is here. Says you might have to go back to the old school projector and a whiteboard to keep that computer from acting up. Hopefully you'll have a productive Friday. Yeah, we will. Thank you, Raymond. It is frustrating, but what can you do? Thunder7 says, tweets from your man, Mike Davis. Mike Davis is the man. Says Trump declassified Crossfire hurricane records, may have declared a copy as personal. Said those records could be very damning to the Biden people. Yeah, Mike Davis is a great follow. Says they won a short-term victory, but eventually these records are going to come out. That's from Mr. D DMA over on Twitter. Good follow. Here's one from Moose in the House. Says, Rob, given the special master statement that Team Trump has only one opportunity to define the documents, then Team T is not given a chance to define the disputed documents, then Team T is not given a chance to later discover errors in the government's position. What if the truth is that Team T overlooked a government error or a document planted by the government? Can the special master actually impose such a requirement when that requirement may not be in the end provide a path to the truth? Will such a requirement be binding in an actual trial when additional contradictory information could be discovered later? Good question. So let's see what's going on over here. Yeah, so it's a good question. So these could all be defenses that Trump uses. The reason why I was getting so skittish about that spreadsheet conversation is because, right, if Trump does make a commitment, yes, that could be either used against him later, or if it can't be like necessarily admitted at a trial. Because remember some of the prior trials that we've covered here, we have things called motions in limine that we fight over, that are external statements, prior statements, hearsay statements, all this stuff. Can you use that stuff? It's all battled out in a criminal court before a trial starts. And so the government would absolutely try to use those statements saying Trump said this and that's not true. See, he lied, if they could. But the government might say, well, it's kind of a different case. That's a civil case. That's for special masters. That's only for limited portions of this. And so we're not going to allow all of that to come in because it's not actually, it's sort of part of it's a separate investigation. But yes, this is why I get nervous. This is why I get nervous, because if Trump says I declassified everything and they fill out all those documents and they submit it to the prosecution and that's not true, right? Maybe it's not good. It sort of opens up, it exposes them. Here, Thunder7 says there's not going to be a show tomorrow. Today is the meme day. They paid a foreign government to falsify information, then lied to the courts to spy and overthrow Trump. Democrats lied and impeached Trump to hide their crimes. We will never forget or forgive them. It's going to be peaceful payback time. Here is this one. It says, hey, Rob, recently bought this. It's great. Let's get one headed your way. So the Asus return of gaming. Yeah, I mean, mine kind of looks like that. Like I have that. I'm looking at my computer right now. It kind of looks like that. So yeah, I need something that's, I think, a better brand, like a robust brand. That's a nice quality brand. That's not one of these assembled, something or other garbages. But yeah, my computer's, I don't think I have the 380. Do I have a 380? I don't think I have a 380. I don't know. Thank you, Zach. I do need to look into it. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm not sure when I got this computer. I thought it was newer. Anyways, Thunder says, the Spanisho word of the day, DeSantis. We thought Democrats liked us in Martha's Vineyard, then DeSantis away. Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, no. DeSantis. Oh, no. That's just too much. We thought the Democrats liked us in Martha's Vineyard, then DeSantis away. Oh, no. That's just too bad. That's great. Thank you, Thunder7. Miss Lucky says, and hopefully that's, acceptable. Miss Lucky says, we love our My Pillows. Proud to support Mike. Go Mike, buy his pillows. Karaoke Princess says, don't forget the promo code POSO when you order your pillows at My Pillow. Yeah, Jack Pasovic. I love how he intersperses his promo code into all of the things that he does. It's very, very, very useful. Maybe I should do more of that. R&R Law Group, by the way. R&R Law Group. All right, here we got this one. A couple more came in. That one was from Karaoke Princess. Sergeant Bob says, as a public service, maybe you should go over the automobile exception to how the search warrant works. Well, your car is basically fair game, right? Basically anything in your car, in your wingspan, they will say that they have access to. You can make fights over the trunk and stuff, but yeah, the search warrant has really been watered down in our country, and I could rant about that for days. Good to see you, Sergeant. Thunder says, the swamp may think it's insulting to call Lindell a pillow salesman, but he's made millions doing so. He just broke Bed Bath & Beyond, who canceled selling his products and then boycotted by the MAGA crowd. He made more profits after they canceled him. We love our pillow guy. We have Karaoke says, so they can cut off his finger to use the phone. That's not exactly what they were going for, but hypothetically, maybe. We have Sergeant Bob says, Bitta Air Lindell. I don't know what that says. Is that in a different language? Heather says, I think I'll take my bets with the passcode versus the fingerprint Face ID. Dershowitz also covered this on his show. He talked about the reasoning why he was defending Mike Lindell. I'd be curious I might have to check that out. Thank you, three girlies. Another one is here from Former, says that could have ended up poorly for the FBI. In these times where criminals use vehicles to attack law-abiding citizens, this could have been a perfect self-defense claim if he chose to protect himself. What are we talking about here? They got lucky, nobody died. I would not recommend this tactic. Marked. I'm not sure what you're talking about there, former Elio. Did I miss something? Did we talk about a shooting today? TOS Forever says, Rob, the fact of how they found him. Oh, I see. You're talking about the raid, the lawless. Yeah, you're talking the Lindell raid. Yeah. Not utilizing local law enforcement, uninformed FBI agents, no marked vehicles. I can't imagine what would have happened if he was armed and started firing back at them. FBI's reckless and stupid. They're lucky nobody died. I wouldn't recommend this tactic. And I know Sergeant Bob would agree. After all, he is a sergeant. Good comment. Took me a minute. TOS says, the fact of how they found him is going to verify the truth of the lawsuit, that they're tracking them. Oh, that's going to go back to the mules. Oh, yeah. Interesting. So that they're using the same technology that they were using in the mules for tracking Mike Lindell. Sergeant Bob is here, says, I do not do hats, but I think I will start wearing my MAGA hat in support. In Chino Valley, this is a plus. Other places don't care, wear it anyways. Yeah, my neighborhood, it's probably not a good hat. I walk around in the morning doing the morning walk and talks, and sometimes that causes some reaction from people. But in Chino Valley, I got to imagine it's a pretty nice spot there for the nice red MAGA hat. Speech Unleashed says, Rob, regarding the 41-year-old man killing the 18-year-old because of politics, what I love the most, sarcasm, is the man's reason for objecting to bail set because, quote, have a job, have a life, house, and I don't want things to go by the wayside. Family that are very important to me. Says, what about the 18-year-old that he killed? Did that 18-year-old not have a life, a job, a family that was very important to him? If I was that judge, I wouldn't have been able to keep the shock and disgust from my face when the man said that. Yeah, Speech, if I can just play the other side brief. So first of all, right, this is a horrific story, right? Like it's absolutely horrific. It makes my stomach churn because I lost my younger brother, and my mom found him. Right. So I sort of can feel that in my core. So I'm sort of, it's emotional. It's an emotional story for me, but it's also when I see a person like that in that position, I honestly, I think he's in a state of shock. He doesn't realize what's happening, right? He goes from a free person living in a free society to being in handcuffs, being charged with murder. It's like a different reality. Okay. And so, he probably doesn't even know what happened. He doesn't even process it. May not even remember it, And so he's just sitting there trying to reconcile what just happened. And, it's a really horrible thing. Lives change in a freaking instant, in an instant, one stupid thing, and it's all over. And, I try to find empathy in people. I try to find empathy in people who do something badly. And I have a lot, I think that there's a lot of problems with how we handle all of this stuff. I think there are a lot of extremely unwell people out there. extremely sick people that have been made sick by the last 2 years of government, by the last 2 years of lockdowns, of mandates, of evaporation of liberties. People are being squeezed to death. People are having their savings evaporate, their credit card bills magnified. And you have a psycho president like Joe Biden who blames an entire political party called the extremist MAGA Republicans and gave a whole speech in front of the Seventh Circle about it. And it is causing people to snap and to lose their minds. And I think it's probably just getting started. So I'm hopeful that we can do something to stop that onslaught. But speech, it is a disgusting thing, but I can understand it. I can understand it because he honestly probably has no idea. And it could be true that he doesn't care. It could be true that he's just a sick person who doesn't care about murdering Republicans. It could be that also. But it might not be. It might just be a person who has just woken up in a nuclear bomb. It's a crazy thing. Anyways, thank you for the comment, speech. It is unfortunately a part of our lives. We have another one here from Three Girlies. Here, a couple of these came in. Stookie says the parents of the slain teen Republican should sue Biden for his red speech condemning Republicans as dangerous and violent. It gave license for open season on Republicans. Yeah. Look, if it was Trump, you got to imagine, right? He'd be impeached a fourth time. We had another one from Sergeant Bob says to all, stop calling them accidents. Most are not. They're collisions with clear at-fault parties. Accidents is like an act of God, like a boulder falling off a mountain and crushing a car. We had another one from Three Girlies says, I'm sorry, that's premeditated murder. The suspect admitted to having a political argument with the victim before he got in his car and ran him over. It was not just run over with the car. He was drunk and he left the scene. That would be a vehicular accident causing death and leaving the scene. But this guy, he ran him over because of his views. The guy should not be out of jail. He should be charged with premeditated murder. Yeah, I also noticed that, Three Girlies. The vehicular homicide certainly does seem like a lower charge, right? Some other murder charge, like vehicular homicide, it's like an accident. His family showed up at the scene because her son had called her. What a nightmare. I feel sorry for this family. There are GoFundMes available. I don't know which ones to vet or not vet or which ones are legit or not legit, but there are, and I'd encourage you to consider contributing to the family if it's something that hits your heart. Thunder7 says, I can't believe a young man was murdered because the killer didn't like his views. Can Biden be sued because he paved the way for this with his demonic speech? No. This egged on the lunatics who are openly killing Republicans, and Biden's is responsible. He should be charged with inciting violence. I can only pray for the loved ones who will never be able to watch this young man grow up and become the man he was meant to be. Rest in peace, dear friend. Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, rest in peace to him, his family. If anybody's in a situation like that, I'm a part of an organization called ericshouse.org that helps good people who have lost a loved one due to overdose, suicide, or tragic death. Those are the three big categories. ericshouse.org. Somebody, like I was in a men's group, we talked with a young man who lost his daughter, 14 ATV accident. Oh my gosh. Right? And this family, they had their 18-year-old son taken away from them. It's one of the worst things in the world. So thoughts and prayers to that family. My goodness. All right. And I think that's it, my friends, over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We had a couple super tips come in over from our friends on YouTube. John Allan is here. John Allan says, John Allan sent two of these. He said, happy for the Happy Rob and belated Joey birthday fund. For the Happy Rob and belated Joey birthday fund from John Allan. And another one from John. He says, here's a start for your new computer fund. Spend it wisely and give me a call when you want it done right. Well, if somebody builds them, I might, maybe I want somebody to build one, I don't know. I don't know what I need to do here, but I have a lot of stuff going into this computer, like cords and all this crap. I got all this screens and all sorts of crap. So it's a lot. I'm not sure exactly what I need, but evidently an upgrade is in order. And thank you very much, John Allan, for both of those. All right. And I think that is it, my friends, for all the questions, the super chats. I know we had a new member. Let's see if I can see who became our newest member over on YouTube. We had, Paul Berkowitz. Shout out to Paul Berkowitz who joined up at the start of the show. Welcome. Going to get those morning walk and talks Also, Riley Patterson and Led Zepp joined in a couple days ago. Welcome to both of you. Grateful that you are here and with us. But I do believe that is it for us for the day, my friends. And so we are going to leave it right there. I want to thank everybody who was a part of the show over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We've got an amazing community over there. I skipped Savvy Sue's post. Oh no, what did I miss? Hold on. Savvy Sue says I missed something. Let's see. What did I miss? Hang on here. We're not going to miss it. Let's see where it went. We've got time. We've got time. Sorry about that, Savvy. Let's see where it went. Rai T said, when was the last time the computer was rebooted? Does it have the latest drivers? It probably does not have the latest NVIDIA drivers. I missed a page or two. I did? Hold on a minute. Did I miss a whole full page? Oh my gosh, I did miss a full page. Hang on a second. Yes, okay. I think I missed a full page. We got more comments. L.A. Jing says, I think you read the Brandt thing a bit wrong. It said Caylor's parents did know Brandt, but did not think their son did. Also, should I hold my breath for the special committee to get Biden up on instigating political violence? I could have read it wrong. I very well could have, but they knew him, but the son did not. Interesting, yeah. No, but nothing's going to happen. Nobody cares. You know, it's the wrong political parties, so the media just lets it go. E. Dantes is here, says, just wanted to say thank you for doing great shows. I look forward every day to you breaking down the day's events. Well, I'm glad that you're here, E. Dantes. Very glad that you're here. And thank you, Bear Ashby, for that nice super chat that came in. Bear says, Rob, I'm sorry for your loss of family. God bless you. Yeah. We're not alone, Bear. You know, there's a lot of people out there who are really suffering out there. It's, you know, call your mom tonight, call your loved ones tonight. It's just a horrible thing. Edon Test says 16 gigabytes of RAM. Are you a child? Let's get you a real computer. I think it's 16. I think it's 16. Hey, that was like a lot back then. You know, that was like a lot. Let me check my performance over here. Yeah, look at this, baby. Here, let's take a look at this. Here is the look at this. 16 gigabytes, baby. We're maxing out. We got a full 12.9 out of the 15.9 gigabytes. CPU's doing good. Previously, we had a CPU problem, which is why we had the web browsers crash out. But we're good. We're good. I can get away with it. 3 Girly says 2 years ago, you need a better computer, preferably with way better RAM. LOL. Knowledge Tree says drug trafficking, human and child trafficking are the blood on their hands. Why are they still in office instead of in jail? This. He says, this admin is a problem, including the media. From Knowledge Tree. No, look, nobody cares about drug trafficking, human child trafficking, none of that crap. It's irrelevant, okay? What we care about is Trump's valuations of his property in New York. That's what I wake up worried about. It sounds like you do too, Knowledge Tree. Thanks for being here. Captain Jim says, excellent show, Rob. A heartfelt thank you for 1, no Kamala Harris, 2, no Letitia James. That's true. We really had a Kamala, Letitia, Tishy James free show tonight. Most sincere thanks, especially since your show was during our dinner time here on the East Coast. By the way, out of curiosity, are you going to build that Lego Capitol set? It's a good question. You know, I don't know. I kind of want to. He's talking about this Lego set, which of course was a joke that the FBI included in one of their affidavits after the FBI started playing Where's Waldo, trying to find all the J6ers. They said in an affidavit, we found a Capitol building Lego set. And we think that they were using that to plot their insurrection of America. It's just a stupid joke. But I do love Legos, and I love building little things and puzzles and scorpions and things. So yeah, maybe I will. But you're welcome. No Kamala, no Letitia. Yeah, it felt like one of those days. 3 Girly says, if Mike Lindell was smart, he would get a new phone. Would be a good call, and hopefully just connect everything. Says, Rob, you don't know the intricate details about how appeals work. Am I wasting my time being an appeals clinic? I'm not even that smart. P.S. T-shirts are more comfortable than polos. Well, look, C-Rose, about 99% of the time, your opinions here on the show are deemed invalid, rightfully so, including your take on Terminator 1 versus Terminator 2, obviously wrong, and your take on Pepsi versus Coke, clearly erroneous, and your take about pineapple on pizza, which is ridiculous and offensive. But I actually agree with you on this one. Yeah, t-shirts are more comfortable than polos. It's true. But I wear polos because I'm trying to pretend to be professional. But no, you're probably not wasting your time being in appeals clinic. I do know you, C. Rose. You're a lot more intelligent than I am. So you're a smart lawyer, and that's where you should be, where smart lawyers go. We have Wild Child says, shout out to the oldest and middle girlies too. That's true. That's true. They sort of get forgotten about here. I think it's only 3 girlies, and it's Heather, middle, youngest, right? So yeah. So it's Heather. I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong about that. But I made that mistake, Wild Child. I said shout out to Heather and the 3 girlies. And I think it's just the 3 girlies. But Heather's here, so she could probably correct us on that if she wanted to. But you're right. Shout out to all the girlies at all the 3 girlies households. Miss Lucky says, yes, we can and we should win, but let us dump Mitch. We had another one from Savdi says, even if Trump claimed he declassified everything during the interview, it wasn't under oath. Does that make a difference? So in his response to the special master, all of that's going to be official record, right? When he fills out that spreadsheet, yeah, that's all going to be official documentation under oath, submitted under penalty of perjury to the court. So the interview is different. Now, the interview is impeachment material. Okay, so if Trump does get prosecuted and Trump or somebody on a defense stand takes the stand and they start saying something, they can say, oh, well, Trump, you said this on Sean Hannity's show in September. And so are you lying now or were you lying then? Right. And so that's where it gets dangerous. Here, Wild Child and Savvy Sue is here. Says, hey, let's get that pillow guy. Peas don't open and you'll feel you need to, please don't open or you'll feel the need to shower afterwards. Oh gosh, I saw this. It's from the Daily Mail. Yeah, sorry, Savvy Sue. Let me read that again because this is ridiculous. I can't even talk. But hey, let's get that pillow guy. Please don't open or you'll feel the need to shower afterwards. And it's Hunter Biden going down a water slide naked. Naked. Totally gross. From MSW 20, Savvy Sue in the house. Now, he hired a bunch of hookers and he's sort of, lounging around. Geo is here. Geomancy Games, subscribe on YouTube, says, not sure if you're still streaming, but I got my results on my latest CAT scan on my birthday a few days ago. My tumor markers are up, and there's a new growth on another lymph node. Means the cancer is growing again. If you're the praying type, my family could use them in this very dark time. Peace and love, everybody. Love your friends and family every day. It can end in an instant. Yeah, Geo, sorry to hear that, my friend, but I'm glad that you are here with us and that we can take a moment to send thoughts your way and send that good energy and that love and those prayers your direction, because it is a trying time for you. I'm sure of that. No doubt about it. But we are thinking about you. And, Heather is here. She says, you're in our prayers. Setbacks are hard. It's a battle. Our household is praying for you, as is ours. And I'm sure there are many others here. Hang in there, Geomancy Games. And hey, if you want to really check out a great YouTube channel, go over into your search bar and type out Geomancy Games and subscribe to his channel. He's putting out great content, and I'm sure he'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment over there, like a video. That's what it's all about. Shout out to Geo. We have Heather says, he needs to Paul me no big beautiful spotlight video as the technical difficulties screen. I deserve it. It's fair. All right. Thunder 7 says, when the people feel the government, there is tyranny. When the government fears the people, there is liberty. When the people fear the government, there is tyranny. When the government fears the people, there is liberty. Good comment there from Thomas Jefferson, 3rd president, over from Thunder 7. Here, this one came in from Trollmaster, says, meme day, you say? German kids have found other heating options. Santa Claus. I don't understand this one. They're asking for electricity or something over there? Energy? I don't get it. FedCure says, Rob, sick of sick over the running down and slaughtering of young 18-year-old Caylor Ellingson. No big deal, according to the MSM, not even covering the tragedy. Imagine if reversed. Yeah, it would be an epic meltdown all across the media. This one came in from former LEO, Spanish word of the day, hotel. When the migrant arrived at Kamala's house, that hotel them to get off. That hotel them to get off her lawn. Okay, that took me like way too long to understand that one. Are these inappropriate? I can't tell. I can't tell if these are inappropriate. Here's another. Aggie Martin says, look at the Puget systems for a new machine. They are purposely built for your needs, and the customer service is excellent. Not cheap or quick, but one of the best systems I've ever had. I do CAD and BIM work, heavy graphics intensive. That's what I'm looking for. Like, I want like the real piece of equipment that doesn't mess up, I can put it through the ringer. Because, I've got a lot of crap going on all these screens. I got multiple chats, YouTube chat, locals chat, Rumble chat. I got my streaming mixer. I've got the Edge browser with all the PDFs open. I've got the Gmail, the YouTube studio. It's a lot. So I need a good computer to handle all of this. Here, this one came in. This true? Trump is not impressed. No show on Friday. It is true. It is true. The show is going to not happen tomorrow. It probably may come back. Well, maybe this weekend. We'll see. But yeah, I've got an all-day event at the office. I'm going to go get the package at the office tomorrow, and we'll open that live on air. But yeah, there's not going to be a show tomorrow because I'm going to be there at the office. We have a DUI seminar from 8 to about 4:30. And the show starts at 4:30. I'm not going to have any prep time, so we're not going to be able to do anything. But maybe we'll do some videos for members when I'm there, sort of showing you what's going on behind the scenes. Could be kind of fun. Former LEO says the warrant service. Sergeant Bob says, okay, that was my high school German saying, please, Mr. Lindell, come to the police station with me. Okay, so I was supposed to read it in a German accent. I got it. I would have botched it and wouldn't have been able to do it anyways. Here's Rye T says, maybe the FBI's tactic was done on purpose, hoping he'd defend himself. That way, he either ends up a victim of justified use of force by officers, or he ends up on the hook for defending himself against the LEOs. Yeah, in other words, the FBI was trying to instigate Mike Lindell to do something to sort of cause a reaction out of him. Former says, you missed a page. Got that. Rye T says, when was the computer last rebooted? Does it have the drivers? Yeah, I think we answered that one, but I don't know when it was rebooted. But I just saw that NVIDIA came out with new drivers, and so maybe that would help. Let's see. This one came in from Former, says, you might want to wait until after the midterms for that Lego Capitol. That's a great point. Don't start assembling any Capitol sets, all right, until the Republicans are back in charge. That's a pretty good bit of advice. Sergeant Bob says, polos are more professional. Tees are a little bit low class. Yeah, tell that. Who said that? Yeah. Speech says, pineapple belongs on pizza so long as there is ham on it too. Oh my gosh. What? You should try cherry pizza sometime. Oh my, what is happening right now? Heather says, oldest girlie just ordered a bacon, black olive, and pineapple pizza. Oh gosh, I'm going to end the show. I'm going to end it. What? I don't know. How did that happen? Who decided this was a thing? Black olives? I'm supposed to like those because I'm Italian and I don't like them. Three Girlies says, yes, mama girlie, oldest girlie, and youngest girlie. Youngest girlie is on 3-day, 2-night field trip for school, so hasn't been home to ask for a shout out. All right, well, we're giving her shout outs anyways. Shout out to the youngest girlie. All right, let's see what else we have here on this one. This one came in from Thunder 7. We got a picture of Obama on Martha's Vineyard waving goodbye on the Hypocrite Express, deporting the migrants after just a short 44 hours. Yeah. Bye. Adios. Te amo. Te amo. Te amo. Yeah, get out of here. All right. And I think we're going to do one final refresh. We had another super chat come in from our friend Bear Ashby over on YouTube. So let's pull those up. And let's see what we had here. Bear Ashby, I just saw that one come in, and going to do a refresh on this screen before we wrap it up for the day. Here are a couple more. Bear Ashby submitted this one on YouTube. He says, Rob, I'm sorry for your loss. Sorry, Rob, for your loss of family. God bless you. Thank you very much, Bear. Yeah, it's a tough thing out there, but there's a lot of people. We have an amazing community of people who've helped us through it. It's very important. C. Reed says, part of the ransom, Schrodinger's Trumpy Bear. Part of the ransom. Well, I'm going to be at the office tomorrow. Apparently, that's where it is nestled safe and sound. So I will grab that and we'll have that available for an opening next week. But that, my friends, appears to be it for the day. I think we're going to leave it right there and come back tomorrow for a whole nother show. I want to thank everybody who was a part of the program, all of our friends over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com, chatting away. We've got John Allen, Radice, See the Veil, Savvy Sue, C. Reed, John McGarvey, many others chatting away. Jay Viv is in the house. Good to see you, Jay Viv. JC the Music Man and others. You can also join and support the show. Thank you to His Story for that super chat coming in here at the end. I appreciate you there. You can also join on YouTube. We had some new members join up. Welcome to our newest members. You get the morning walk and talk videos. You also get to use those custom GIFs for the chat. I am also a lawyer over at the R&R Law Group. We're a criminal defense law firm located in Scottsdale, Arizona. And we have a mission to help good people charged with crimes find safety, clarity, and hope, not only in their cases, but beyond that in their lives. And so if you happen to know anybody who's been charged with any type of crime, criminal speeding, domestic violence, any of those crimes, right, we can help with those. And we really can help. The goal is to help good people get things back in order, get back on track, make sure the government doesn't run roughshod over them, and move this whole thing forward in a nice, amicable way that doesn't leave a person's life destroyed. We love what we do. Free case evaluations, 480-787-0394, online at rrlawaz.com. Thank you for keeping us in your mind for referrals. And also, thank you to our mods, as usual, who are modding down the fort, except for Vienticus. Shout outs to K-Bean, Just Cause, Lean, Playin' Hooky, Ronnie Cole, Zulu, Geomancy Games, subscribe on YouTube, Henry Dixon, and others who swing by from time to time. I also want to say thank you to our Spotlight supporters, Chris Romero, David B3, Dr. EMB in the house, along with John over at qsimple.com. Thank you for all supporting the show with a little bit of extra monetary love. And that, my friends, is it for us for the day. His Story sent in saying, the left demonic. Final super chat of the day, but thank you, His Story, for sending that one in as we wrap it up. But that, my friends, is in fact it for us on the day. We are not going to be back here tomorrow because I'm going to be at a DUI seminar all day at our office, and it's going to be a lot of fun. But definitely stick around. I'm going to try to, there probably will not even be a morning walk and talk tomorrow because I got to get to the office kind of early, but I'll post videos from there. So if you're a member, check those out. Otherwise, my friends, I look forward to seeing you right back here on Monday so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Have a tremendous evening, my friends. Sleep very well, and I will see you on the next one. Bye-bye.